Yes, I'm with Darius, who runs a small business in the middle of St Helier. He'll be familiar to lots of people. He had a spat with the Jersey Employment Tribunal. Just briefly, how did it come about, Darius?
Well, basically, I've tried to look at the way that people are employed, and I don't think employment contracts are the best form of relationship between people. If you go on a program like Dragon's Den, the business leaders are always keen to invest in people. So rather than tell them what to do, they'll just give them the money and encourage them to go out and find their own way, make their own profits, and obviously they'll share the rewards. And it's always handy to have someone at your back guiding you if you need the help. So there was one young lady who was working with me, and she wanted to. Her younger sister was having great difficulty finding a job. She'd applied to numerous, and she asked me if I would mind if her sister came and worked with us, which I said no, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Did she have any experience in your particular trade?
She had no. This was the first job she'd ever had. Right. And basically I respected the person who was working with me, and I wanted to help her sister. Unfortunately, when the relationship broke down, I mean, it was very hard. I did on a number of occasions offer her a contract of employment, but she wouldn't do things like work on a Saturday. She wouldn't do a full working week. There were certain things she didn't want to do. And if you're going to enter into a contract of employment, you can't enter into a contract of employment on the employee's terms.
How long was it before the relationship broke down sufficiently so you had to part?
About 6 months.
6 months. In that time, was she, as far as you're concerned, did she become an employee, or what was her status?
No, so the only relationship I had was with her sister, and she had a relationship with her sister as well, and she just happened to sit here where I'm sitting right now and do work that was under the direction of her sister. Yes, it was to benefit. As you can see, we don't only do jewellery, we sell a lot of things on the internet, collectibles and such like, and it was to there's plenty of stock here for her to sell, and she was free to do whatever she wanted, obviously with the aim of making us a living.
After 6 months she departed and she made a complaint to the Jacks?
What happened on the day in question is it was the first of the month. Obviously I don't keep a lot of cash. Most of my resources are kept in gold because I don't trust the banks, and I've been making a lot of money on the way the gold price is going. So 2 days before what one might call payday, I would send the gold off to the scrap merchant and get the cash to pay the wages. On this day, the gold happened to be held up for an extra day, so on the morning I said to her, "Oh, the gold's not arrived yet. I can't pay you today. I'm expecting it to arrive. It should be about 11 o'clock." So I'm not entirely sure, but because it was going to be 2 hours later than expected, she didn't appear to like it and was obstreperous and sulky and was slamming doors and not generally giving the sort of impression that I want my customers to have when they come through the door. And I had to address the matter to her, and the long and the short of it is she ended up walking out and walked straight round to Jack's and then put in a claim.
What was the first you actually had official notice that a claim had been made? How long?
I think it was about 6 weeks later.
Mm-hmm.
She'd obviously filled in the claim that day, but 6 weeks later I got notification, or I was asked to fill in a Jet 2 form, and I refused on the basis that I wasn't an employer, and the Jersey Employment Tribunal only has authority over employees and employers, and therefore it had no legitimacy.
We'll cut the middle bit out for the moment, just the simplicity. You can explain what happened finally, then we'll go back and discuss how it came about. But what was the final decision, so that people understand where it finally went?
Well, I refused to go to the tribunal. They set up a number of hearings. They made judgments for that in my absence. It went to the Royal Court. I appealed their decisions to the Royal Court. The Royal Court basically said Yes, they have got this all wrong, but it's your fault because you didn't go to the tribunal and tell them where they were going wrong. So go back, and if we find out that you've been misleading the tribunal, then we're going to send you to prison for 2 years. That was then 6 months after that, it appeared in the JP that I might face a 2-year prison sentence. Eventually, and then they sent a couple of lawyers around to discuss the matter with me, and I was advised strongly that I should settle out of court. So, but I mean, along the way I had made offers of settlement to which I'd had no response from the...
I just want to get to the final set, just so that we get the picture of the enormity or the smallness of the actual claim.
Oh, right, okay. So yes, well, in the end, I settled for £487.50.
You paid her that sum of money?
Paid her that sum of
money. And
money.
she was happy with that settlement?
Yes.
And how long did that claim settlement, how long did the whole process take to arrive at that decision?
11 months.
Now that must have taken you, as a small employer, an enormous amount of your time.
Well, it's not. Yes, it is a worrying thing when you're much as many people may say it doesn't really matter. Of course, it matters, and it's on your mind, and you are thinking about it, and you are devoting time to thinking about it, and writing things, and reading things, and working on it.
The young lady, what age was she?
21.
21. You've presumably not spoken to her since the settlement was made. You gave her a cheque and so on.
Well, obviously her sister continued to work with me for some time after the incident.
Right.
It actually soured the relationship over the next few months because,
The reason I'm doing this recording is because I want to understand. I mean, my sympathies tend to be generally with the employee.
Yes.
But it's nice to hear it from the employers. Now, I've attended a number of employment tribunals, and there's quite a lot of one-man bands go along. They've got an employee, and you realise it's not that easy for small businesses to accommodate the requirements of employees. It's not always possible to accommodate their requirements. Time off, illness, all these sorts of things, and they do create problems. Now, the fact that you're a small business, you've got face-to-face with customers, they come into your shop, you've got to have a certain standard of dealing with. That's obviously important. So if a member of staff or a person working here doesn't achieve that standard, it obviously creates a problem.
Yes.
What did Jax, when the dispute went to Jax, did they express any views on this sort of thing, the relationship between an employer, for want of a better, and a member of staff?
No, Jax is totally interested only in itself. I mean, and by that I mean, all it wants to do is do the process. So she'll go down, make a complaint, they'll send me, you fill in this form, you fill in that form, it will go to the tribunal. So
but were Jack's interested in making a settlement? Were they interested in an amicable settlement, or were they pushing towards the tribunal?
When you have a dispute between two parties, the normal thing is, if you intend that it might go down the legal avenue, is one of you, the applicant, will set out their dispute, saying this is what I'm not happy about, this is the basis in law, and they will send it to the other person and give them a chance to respond to it. And the idea is that you settle it without involving all the authorities. Now that never happened, because at no point was the claim of the alleged employee ever written out and said this is 400. In fact, it was me 11 months later who actually made the claim on her behalf and said, is this the claim you're making? And if this is the claim you're making, then I will settle it out of court. But it's not it's a bit ludicrous for me to have to make the claim for the person who's supposed to be my adversary in these adversarial proceedings. Obviously
she wouldn't have been very well guided in law. She'd have been at the mercy of Jax to advise her. Do you think she was well advised by Jax?
No, because at the end of the day this could have been settled in a fraction of the time. If you put your claim down, and the right or the wrong of it, the fact is it's £487.50, which to her is probably a fairly substantial amount of money, but in terms of me having to take 4, 5, 6 afternoons off work, find someone in to cover me, it's not financially viable to pursue that sort of action.
Do you know of other employers who've had vaguely similar situations? Is it something you've discussed with other employers? Or other businesses, more correctly?
Not really.
How did you advise yourself on it, the merits of it? Do you have to just swat up yourself?
No, I went to the Jersey Law website, I read the employment law. You know, my argument was based on there is no contract. So if there's no contract, there can be no contract of employment. So if there's no contract of employment, then there's no jurisdiction for the Jersey Employment Tribunal. That would have been my argument.
And the Royal Court proceedings, who paid for those?
The taxpayer.
Both sides?
Well, there was only one side, because I wasn't actually appealing, I was seeking leave to appeal.
Oh, right.
Because there is no automatic appeal from the Jersey Employment Tribunal. You either have to have the permission of the tribunal or the permission of the Royal Court to go ahead. So, because I sought leave to appeal and there is no leave granted, that's the end of my domestic remedies. So, in legal terms, the next step is to go to the European Court of Human Rights. It's actually quite a weakness if, like me, you believe the human rights law is to prevent people going to the European Court of Human Rights and not to safeguard people's human rights.
It went back to Jack's.
Yes.
For the final resolution. What was that proceeding like, the final determination?
Well, this is the first one that I turned up to. And we sat down, and the tribunal came in, and Advocate Santos Costa introduced me to the two parties, to her left and right, and then said, well, normally it would be Miss Garcia who brings her case now. She said, but is there anything you'd like to say, Mr. Pearce? And I said, simply, yes, well, I don't understand why we're here, because I have offered to settle in full. So if I've offered to settle in full, what more can I do, or what more can you order? And then it was adjourned while the Jack's officer came in, and she went through my calculation. She took it to the employee. The employee went through my calculation, made a small adjustment, which was about £40 or something. Then she brought it back to me, and I said, yes, I'll pay it. Then the Jack's officer said, oh, you need to sign this statement. And I read the statement, and it said, this is a matter arising from her contract of employment. And I said, well, the whole point is, I've just said she's not had a contract of employment, so I can't sign this. So she stormed out, oh, you've wasted my time, Mr. Pearce. The tribunal came back in, and I simply said to Advocate Santos Costa, well, there's agreement between the parties. How can we continue when we're in agreement? And in the end she said, oh yes, well, you don't actually need Jack's. You don't need to follow the Jack's procedure, you can just settle.
Did that procedure, the tribunal, did that cost anybody any money?
Of course it cost the taxpayer money. It costs £2,000 for each time the tribunal sits. And
where does that money come from, and where does it go to?
Well, it comes out of the Social Security budget, I would imagine.
So the people who are sitting on the tribunal, they're paid, as you understand?
Yes, £2,000 a hearing.
Right.
So what is, and at the end of the day, the employee is on income support and remains on income support because she's not got a job since she walked out of here.
Was she represented at the final tribunal?
No.
Do you think that was unfair to her? Would you have thought she needed representation?
Well, how can you be expected to do something when you don't understand what you're doing? But then, on the same argument, she shouldn't have been allowed to put an application into Jack's at all because she didn't know what she was doing. I would very much favour that before you're allowed to do all of that, you have to try and reach a settlement with your employer or former employer. You have to do what a reasonable person would do, which is to try and avoid conflict by...
In the current climate, where there are all sorts of schemes afoot to try and get local people into jobs, there's all sorts of job creation schemes, there are all sorts of semi-voluntary job schemes going on. It seems to me there are potential for all sorts of conflicts of this sort to arise. People might be going in, working hours and getting a small amount of pay, maybe a voluntary payment, the employers. I mean, it seems to me that we could have disputes arising on all sorts of things. Is this something that would worry you as an employer or a business?
Yes, of course, which is why I don't employ anybody. I'm trying wherever possible to deal with people on a self-employed basis, as equals, not as master and servant.
Does the Social Security Department accept that arrangement?
No, they don't. No, they don't like it, because obviously when you're in a contract of employment, you're basically saying to the government, yes, you can tax me, and yes, you can take social security off me. Whereas me as a self-employed person, if I can't afford to pay my social security, I go to social security and say I cannot afford to pay, and they write it off. If I don't make any money, I don't pay any tax.
Especially in a climate where lots of businesses are struggling, they might want staff to be available for a month and then have a couple of weeks off because they're simply not to work. I mean, these are the sort of possibilities that could arise.
You've got to, well, yes, it doesn't allow for flexibility. The system doesn't allow for the flexibility which businesses often require.
This, I take it, is not what you would describe as an unhappy experience.
Well, not really unhappy. It's regrettable. I wish. The thing that upsets me the most is that the relationship between me and her sister broke down, because there's 2 years there where we'd been working together, and it takes about 2 years to train someone to do a job, or you've got to have a certain amount of experience, because some things only come up when they come up, and it takes 2 years for all those things to come up. But
a simpler arbitration system, you would have thought maybe this thing could have been settled within a month, just around the table. A dispute, settle it.
I just don't think that Jax is looking to settle. I think Jax is looking to give work to Jax to do. And that's not in the interest of employers, and it's not in the interest of employees. It's in the interest of the civil servants.
There's one final practical note. We try to keep an eye on these employment tribunals. Your final hearing took place without any formal notice to the public. So they're supposed to be public hearings. Have you any idea why that was so?
No idea at all. I mean, I was told sort of 3 weeks before I received notice, even though I hadn't turned up. As it happened, I hadn't turned up because I was in Royal Court helping my brother with something, and as part of that, from that hearing, I received the notes which said that your next hearing will be in 3 weeks' time. So,
okay. Anything else you want to say? Anything?
Not really. Just if anybody wants to come and work with me on a self-employed basis, I'll be delighted to hear from them.
Okay, we'll pass the word around.
Thank you, Mike.
Cheers.